Gentleman by the name of Quill.
Oh, Quill. Quill's a neighbor.
Quill. Yeah.
Quill Chase.
Yeah. Long timer.
Oh, Quill. He used to live on Veracity property.
Yeah.
Yeah, he lives off Kyler now, on the family property.
Yeah, he's a cool guy.
Dogs there. I've been chasing the fucking dogs from hither to yon lately. I picked them up at Whalebone on Monday and basically Old Settler and Peachy Canyon on Sunday.
Wow. Where they get?
I always see on that like.
Say it again.
Go ahead, Jordan.
Oh, I was going to say on that neighborhood email that goes through, it's like there are 2 white dogs running through our property. I'm like, those are the chair. I don't get on and say it, but I know.
2 large white dogs.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
Doug Ayers, who lives down the road, he's got a big white dog that he just lets go roam, and it hangs out like with Laird Fauchet's sheep right there at Rangeland on Peachy and Willow. So now I get the call of, hey, one of your dogs is at Rangeland. I'm like, does it have a pink nose? They're like, yeah. I'm like, no, ours doesn't have a pink nose.
You got to do nose identification before you make the call, please.
Yeah. Because the first time I saw that dog, I was like, oh my God, that looks just like Obi. Curly tail, big and whatnot. And then I was like, oh, it's got pink nose, pink eyes.
Mm.
All right. We are live. We're recording. We're on Facebook. We've got it all going on.
Test.
Cool.
Test.
Yeah, I think testing plenty. And yeah, looks like we're good. Sweet. We haven't done one of these.
A little shoe polish on your.
That was just.
You've got a glare going, Chris. Maybe a
what,
little
here
shoe polish
or there?
Right
These 2. I know. I forgot my ring this time. I'm out of practice.
We just saw who's the gal that plays the Queen in The Crown currently? Olivia Colman. I forget her name, but she's a great actor. And she was on Fallon the other night, and she had one of those halos, and her eyes just had this like creepy cyborg white ring. It was like, ooh.
Ooh.
Right on. So David Rappaport, thank you. Happy New Year to you as well. Looking forward to the topic. We are too. And Stephen Martha Hewitt over in Columbus, Ohio. Great to have you back again. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for not forgetting to come back again. And they say Chris Cherry has been one of our tour guides for all things food and wine throughout California for many years. So, and then hi to Jordan and Don. Right on. Thank you to the Hewitts. And we've got other little comments coming through. So hopefully if you guys see those, you can see that and comment back if you want to. I think we're just about there that we can get started. So right on, lots of hellos, very cool. All right, right on. So welcome back everyone. Happy New Year. Thanks again for joining us for one of these Hangouts. I'll just let you know, by the way, we're changing things up a little bit here pretty soon. We're going to actually call the Hangout something different. We're going to call it the Paso Wine Hour, because originally this was meant to be kind of a short thing, and then we graduated onto an hour, and then after a little while, sometimes we get a little even longer. And so we're going to change the name and spruce it up a little bit with some other things. So you'll see, we should hopefully have all of the shows for the next couple of weeks listed on pasowine.com typically, so you guys plan a little better too as well. So just trying to shape it up a little because we're going to be doing this for a little while. All right, right on. Today, we are talking about the wine score. And I selected a few people to provide their thoughts and opinions on the wine score, and this can be that score, you know, that 90 and above or whatever that you might see on a shelf talker in a wine store, or maybe even on a menu noted, or maybe even on a tasting sheet or something like that. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. People that I've chosen for today, we have Chris Cherry, Don Burns, and Jordan Fiorentini. We're going to start getting a little intro from Chris Cherry of Via Creek and the MAHA estate. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Chris. Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in on this nice Thursday afternoon. I think it's going to be an interesting conversation, a colorful conversation. For those that don't know me, my wife Joanne and I grow grapes for MAHA Estate and make wines under the Via Creek cellar label, and have been doing so since 2001. So I see a lot of familiar names so far on the chat lineup. So looking forward to this.
Right on. Thank you. Jordan Fiorentini with Epoch. If you couldn't tell, I mean, it's huge.
I know, I was going to say, hi, everyone. I'm Jordan. I'm the winemaker at Epoch. I am in our tasting room right now and really excited to be here and attending. It's great to see familiar names pop up, but then also just for your attention and your patronage over the who knows however many years. It's really great to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for doing such a great setup with that the bottle lineup too. We'll have a screen share later where
Yeah, that's awesome.
a little closer, but that's a nice setup. I'll note Jordan is joining us. She's going to probably jump off a little early. She's got some other stuff happening, but we'll be sure to get as much as we can out of her before she's got to jump. Dawn Burns with Turtle Rock Vineyards. Dawn, thanks so much for joining us this time around.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Chris. Good to be here. Excited to chat with two of my favorite people from the area, favorite winemakers and friends as well. Should be an interesting conversation. And again, thanks. I like everybody else, see a lot of very familiar names on that list, and appreciate you guys tuning in, and appreciate all your support over the last year or so. It's been crucial and much appreciated.
Yeah. We really appreciate this audience, everybody that's been tuning in, but also buying our wines and visiting when they could anyway, and ordering and just being such solid fans of our region. And so we definitely appreciate you, especially right now as we continue down this path. So today we're talking about the score, and maybe what the score can do, what it can't do. Really, what does it mean? It's such a subjective thing, and yet there are so many ways that wineries can leverage a score, especially a good score, obviously, to help them sell wine. But does it actually move the needle? Does it actually do anything? That's what we're talking about today. We're not pointing out, or pointing our finger at certain reviewers or certain publications. We're just not going to do that. That's not what this is about, but rather just talking about this thing that is very unique, of course, to our wine industry. It's what's so unique is you sell wine by putting this in somebody's mouth and hopefully creating that impression, right? That they like it, they want it, and they want to have it. But what's another interesting thing about our wine industry that's across the board is how much someone's referral or a third-party source is so meaningful in the ability to sell wine, whether it's telling somebody about a wine that you had at a restaurant and go get it, or even walking into a tasting room and that tasting room attendant saying, where do you want to go next? You should go here. It's such this whole referral based thing, and the scores are part of that. And I had this conversation with Cris, and this is where it was kind of like the impetus of this whole topic with Cris Cherry about, Cris, what does the score do? And we had this cool conversation all about it. And I thought, let's bring that to this medium. And I want to start with Cris, because it was one of your questions in a rhetorical sense that you said to me, what can the score do? Well, what can the score do? Cris?
Well, I think when Chris Toronto initially proposed this to me, I was like, I don't know. It took me a day to digest it. And I called him back. I'm like, well, we're really not talking about the reviewer. We're talking about the score. And I think the score is an interesting component that can have a rather high variability within a wine and the various reviewers. I know we've seen a range from 87 to 95 on the same wine amongst 4 different reviewers. I think Jordan and I were chatting about that. So, I mean, the score has been an amazing thing. It's actually made projects, it's made brands over the last 15 to 20 years. I think as things are starting to fragment out and become a little bit more crowd based, i.e. cellar tracker, you see a little more continuity. You know, when you have 50 or 60 people rating a wine consistently at one thing as opposed to one person. So I think it definitely has its place. It really has its place in retail wine sales. But I think everybody on this panel will agree that, you know, 95 is the new 90. We can all get 96 points, maybe 97 points, and not put anybody on our retail, our direct to consumer mailing list. But we'll get some conversation from retailers. I think at the end of the day, though, we need to we need to, well, depending on your business plan, make the wines you want, find the people to buy them. You know, I've always said, if you're going to live by the score, you're going to die by the score.
And that's a great point in that it, you know, live and die by the score. And granted, there's probably some people that are out there that might claim some wineries could be score chasers, let's just say. I want to come right out and say that in our area, I don't see that as the case for our area. And if anything, what I see is some really good scores really actually help everybody in the region. I know Jordan and I were kind of talking a little bit about that yesterday when I swung by. And I think it does help, if anything, for those that are see scores as this benchmark for a region, that it can actually help other brands besides just your own. Isn't that right, Jordan?
I totally agree. It's that rising tide floats all ships. I think they get, you know, they start to see that, you know, in Paso, one of the producers got a really high score or a really high rating for the year. And then you just start, you know, they remember that the next time they see a Paso wine, and it helps people feel confident to buy the wine from here. And I think what Wine Enthusiast just rated us, I don't know what year that was, the wine country, #1 wine country of the year. So it took the scores first, I think, and then, you know, people coming here and having so much fun, and then the restaurants scene growing and changing, and then all of a sudden, all these other things happen.
Yeah.
So
it makes it.
So that's more of like, sorry.
Go ahead.
The positive thing of the scores. There's a lot of positives, and it's nice to focus on those versus worrying about, you know, what score did I get? Did I get better than last time? What reviewer? Oh, you know, they grade on a curve, those kind of things. It's nice to focus on the overall positive. That's why I loved that topic when you brought it up to me.
Yeah, it's a really subjective topic at that. And Dawn, you and I were talking a little bit about that subjectivity before. And I think something that you had said is something to the effect of how the same wine might score different ways and different numbers with different publications.
Yeah, definitely. And not only that, but on that topic, it might score, or different vintages of possibly the same quality might score differently with the same publication because of different tasters. You know, there's a lot of turnover in that area these days. There's kind of much less of singular palettes in the publication world, I think. But I do think that scores overall help, especially, you know, mid-size or small-size wineries like myself. Like Cris said, though, it doesn't help me so much. Like I don't get a high score and then a 96, 97, 98, and turn around and I have, you know, 20 wine club signups or allocation members and case sales flying out the door. But I do get calls from distributors. And, you know, when I started out, I had to go pound the pavement trying to find a distributor. Now I have them calling me. You know, it definitely gives you more awareness as a brand. You know, maybe get someone to try the wine, which might lead to a sale down the road. And I think it also helps in the community, you know, whether you're at Epoch or Via Creek and your taste room attendant is there and maybe they saw the scores or was talking to Cris or Jordan and oh, you know, this wine scored well, and they have someone who asks about scores and they can confidently send them somewhere else So it definitely helps with the referral side as well. But I think the days of drastically moving the needle and changing your life over even 100-point score, I think those days are pretty much over. There's just too many people out there now, social media otherwise, doing wine reviews to have a singular force moving the industry in a strong direction.
No, totally. I agree with that. One of the things I wanted to also comment on is with that collective, like if you look at the bigger publications and their critics, like we're talking about wine critics here. We should be remembering that this is their palate and their opinion. And that's a lot easier to remember when it's a singular critic. I don't want to throw names out there, but like James Suckling or Jeb Dunnick, if it's just their name on the publication, people get that. But when you make the broader, score from Wine Enthusiast or Wine Spectator, I believe that people think that's more of like a grade that that place is giving us. The score is the grade. And while I do think that scores over time are kind of like your GPA, like you can trust me, you can spend a lot of money on this wine because you're going to get a good bottle because we've had consistently high scores. So then it gets a branching off point for the consumer to feel comfortable to make up their own mind. But at the same time, the score isn't like a math test where there's like a right and a wrong. It's very subjective. And that's where it's hard with the larger publications because that score seems like it's like a grade. And, they're more like food critics in a way.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's so true. And wine, like art and music, is totally subjective. And I think if you don't have the opportunity to visit wine country or really dig into it, once you find a reviewer who aligns with your palate, then you've got someone to give you some guidance. You taste someone and they're like, oh my gosh, I came across this Cris Toronto guy. He's making amazing wines. You should check him out. And so that makes me go, well, I like what Don likes. I'm going to go check out Chris's wine. So that third party endorsement is definitely helpful. And the reviewer I think really what it comes down to with Chris's comment earlier, who moves the mark? Readership moves the mark. Is it publications like Wine Spectator, Wine Enthusiast, or is it Eric Asimov at the New York Times, who from a palate point of view isn't really aligned with our region or warmer climate wines in general. But we have some friends that had a nice write-up from him. They put 12,000 people on their mailing list, and that was quite some time ago. But what's the readership of the New York Times? I mean, it's pretty substantial. I think reach is what we're talking about.
True.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to reach
Also,
around. Don,
once you get that score, what do you do with it?
what do you do with it? Well, I think depending on what your business plan is, you either promote the shit out of it or you quietly promote it. I think this conversation this panel came out of a really nice article written up by Josh Reynolds at Venice. And the thing that I enjoyed most about it was, wow, he tasted a bunch of wines from Paso, and Paso showed extremely well. I mean, there were 7 pages of wine that scored 90 points and above. That's fantastic for a region.
Mm-hmm.
And for their scoring window as well as a publication.
Absolutely. I think the publication has like all of the publications have inflated a little bit, but historically that publication has been very judicious in how it gives out anything above 95 points.
And particularly in Paso Robles, not necessarily stylistically the wines that I feel those palates are accustomed to or have been historically.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, so with Josh, I've been doing his tasting now for the last 14 years of Paso wines. This is definitely one of the best reviews all across the board that we've had out of Venice since I started. And I think what that means in a sense is that, well, we're getting, by their mark anyway, better, right? But also, I think it's showing a bit of the maturity of our region as we get new technologies that are shared and across the board. And it's this culture that we have in Paso, as fruit has matured, as farming has matured, as all of these things have matured. There are certain barometers that you can use. And I'm using this one in particular to say that to see this all across the board kind of raise in scores, that bodes well for our region, I believe.
Agree.
Totally agree. So we had a question, Sean had a question about whether the critics visit the winery specifically or we submit bottles. And for us, it's a combination. It's really wonderful to have the opportunity to have the face-to-face with a critic in your own home so they can see what you're doing. It gives you more opportunity to show them the trials you're doing, to barrel taste. And if they're a really great critic, you know, they're learning from you, but they're not necessarily using the fact that you got extra time with them to score you differently. They're just using it to gain information about the region in general, which is, and I usually try to show, you know, trials. And the vintage, yeah, and the vintage. So that, I mean, some critics like Wine Spectator, Wine Enthusiast, they don't visit to review the wines ever. But I think other ones will come out.
And I think, you know, I think you're totally correct. And I think when those reviewers have the opportunity to come to a place, I mean, we've all gone to places and gone, wow, now I get it. I mean, when we went to Priorat, it was like, duh. Now I know why these wines taste like they do. You get it. And I think that the reviewers that do have the opportunity or take the time or make the time to come and really put their hands and feet in the dirt a little more, I think they have a better perspective of the region. And I think if they're here on a yearly basis, they have a better perspective of the vintage.
Agree.
I will say though, it's always great. I think our wines always show best when they're at home. Mm-hmm. And when we have the opportunity to, you know, sit and taste with a particular reviewer and give our interpretation of the vintage and the wine, I mean, that is so much better than a cattle call lineup. And, you know, reviewers can review however they want. That's fine. That's their prerogative. It's their publication. But I was a little frustrated a few years back. Yeah, I wasn't really pleased with the scores. I thought the wines were better than they were, you know, and it was basically alphabetical. So Via Creek is following Saxum, Torin. I mean, stylistically, the wines are different wines, and they just show differently. So I think when all of us taste wine, it's like, okay, let's do a few red wines. Let's do some white wine. Let's reset our palate. Let's go.
Or
back.
maybe start with Grenache, move on to Syrah, or
yeah, because as you get, you know, it's like that conventional wine dinner. The biggest and the best wine will be the last wine. Well, shouldn't the biggest and best wine be the first wine?
Right, that too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's how you score your white wine really well. If you show it later in the lineup too, it's really fresh and good. That's my trick. Don't take my trick, Cris.
Don't steal it. Don't steal it.
I've been doing that for our journalist dinners. I've been trying to mix it up where we'll put a white wine in, and there's a reviewer that I've worked with that he does that in his big lineup, and he calls it a sorbet course. So where it helps him reset.
Palate cleanser.
The mint.
Yeah. And there's a question in here from Steve that he wanted to know how has the pandemic actually affected the review process? And I'll tell you from our point of view, or not point of view, but from what we do. So every year we help facilitate a few of these tastings where we maybe create these appointments, working with the reviewer, with the brands that they want to visit, and then also still do a consolidated tasting that they can kind of at their own pace be able to go through over a few days. But that's typically here and in Paso. This year, or 2020, what we had to do is, for one, we did a whole consolidated shipment. So we collected all of the wines and we were able to ship them out to the East Coast in a reefer truck and all that, keeping everything just right. And then providing some coordination remotely, able to help them organize. And then for another publication, we help facilitate appointments and things like that, and just a window of time for wines to be sent so they can be tasted over a large amount of time, at a location. So it's different. They're not getting those one-on-ones. They're using this medium actually, right? Like we're using right now to be able to get some of that one-on-one time, but it's not, same bottle type stuff. It's a little different. I don't know if the three of you want to chime in on that, but hopefully we'll be back to normal later this year.
That was a pretty good description of what's going on. Yeah, it's a little bit like this.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's like better or worse. I always say like a critic usually gets like, they pour like this little bit of your wine because you have 5 to 20 wines. And then they're tasting just that little bit and they have just a short period of time. But maybe, I don't know, but maybe when you send it to them, maybe they can revisit, maybe they have more time is what I hope, and that they can enjoy it even the next day. I know they have a lot of bottles, so that might be a lot to ask. But I think the medium of having the Zoom calls is actually really nice. Obviously, you can't barrel taste. They can't be in the winery. They can't see the vineyard. But it was it wasn't a bad sort of, plan B.
No, I think it was all right.
Yeah. Now back to a little bit of what you do with the score. And we kind of touched on how it might move the needle maybe with retail sales or on or off premise. And that might become part of that marketing plan of yours. But what about in the tasting room? Does that do anything necessarily when somebody's walking in the door and you might see, a score on a tasting sheet or something like that?
We go back and forth. I mean, I think, I like to think that people that visit us are, they found us, whether it's from a great recommendation from one of our peers or through a publication or something. I always like to, and we don't always, I always like to give the customer the opportunity to make that decision themselves. But I will say, more often than not, I'll hear, "Oh, this got 96 points."
Yeah.
Or 98 points or 47 points. I got to say my lowest score ever was a solid 72. I'm proud of it. But
Probably like your favorite wine, is it?
it was a long time ago, actually. Yeah. Justin Smith called me and he's like, certain publications out. I'm like, oh yeah, how'd we do? He's like, well, I was feeling pretty bad about my 75 until I saw your 72. And we just kind of chuckled about it. And I think I learned a long time ago, when you get great press, you beat that drum. And when you don't get great press, you don't say anything.
Well,
People don't.
Yeah, nobody knew, right?
I think too, to touch on something you kind of opened with, Cris, too, that I think the three of us especially have been doing it long enough. We kind of have a vision and an idea of what we want to do when we're making a wine and where we want to go with that wine. And it's not to get a great score. It's because of what you feel about that vineyard, that space, that your intentions. And, it's kind of hard to follow that passion of what you want to turn a wine into or want a wine to become. And then in the back of your head, have the score thing hanging over you. So, it's great to get a great score, and it's, feels good and it does help drive sales. But I think ultimately, getting to where you were trying to get to or creating what you were envisioning is almost more pleasing or feels better than the score.
It's nice to be
I totally
recognized.
agree with that. Mhm.
Yeah.
And
I was
that's
gonna
not the
say,
case
when
for
a critic-
everybody. Yeah. Or like if these two tell me they like my wine, that, you know, I respect them and I know they know the area and I know what the area, the vineyards that I'm working with. And so
Mhm.
to have someone who doesn't even understand necessarily the area, the soil, the, you know, the climates, make a decision about my wine is great. And I'm happy. And if it's bad, then it's not going to really destroy me. You know, maybe they just don't. Wine, like we said, it's so subjective. It doesn't mean that there's not plenty of people. And I think with the people that come to us, and I would imagine Cris and Jordan as well, you know, they're almost looking for that person with the vision and the story and the history and the whole package, not just one great scoring wine. Like that's great. You know, if you get one great scoring wine, but if you get a bunch of pretty good scoring wines, at least you can have faith in the winemaker and trust the vision that they have and where they're going with that wine, and maybe take you on a journey that you weren't expecting, or show you something that's going to be different for you. And
I totally agree. I think, you know, everybody here and everybody that's in our peer group is making the best wine possible for the consumer in every given vintage. Now, when you find someone that you really like, you support them every year. It's kind of like, it's just like music, you know, I'm going to date myself. You buy a Stones album and the Stones album's great. And then a few years later, they put another album out and you're like, I'm going to buy it. And you may listen to it and it may be okay. And then you may revisit it and go, wow, what have I been missing? Like I just listened to Paul McCartney's new album. Now, it's solid. It is totally relevant. And I think, like good winemakers, any artist, you know, they you know, we should get better at what we do. If we had to make that same 98 point wine every single year, I would vomit. Yeah, absolutely. That's what makes this fun. We don't make so much wine that it has to be the same wine every year. This is our interpretation of the vintage through this wine.
If I can't go back and taste my wines and tell what vineyard it was from or what year it was made, and I can't see the differences from year to year, then I feel like I failed as a winemaker. Like that to me is what makes it fun and interesting.
And we've all
I
had that train
totally
wreck.
agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that Dan asked a question, is there really a difference between a 96 to 100? And really there's not. I mean, those are super high scores, so it's all subjective. And that's the thing. There's not really a difference. But, you know, to get to this place where we can have that creativity to do our own thing, it was nice to have the scores early on. So you had the confidence and you knew you could sell them. And so it's great that you have these people who love your wine and are along for the ride. They're along for the differences in the vintage and, you know, whatever the scores might be. So I remember Dan and I had this conversation. I had a Zinfandel that scored 88 in one publication and I think 96 in another. And it's just like what you were talking about, you know? And so then it's up to Dan to say, oh, I'm going to follow this one critic. I said, what do you think about the wine? And he said, I think it's a 96. And so I said, well, that's the critic you should follow. You know, so it's really confusing for consumers, but I think if we remember that they're all critics.
It might also
you
be
had another question about us raising the prices based on a high score. And I think that might be more of a thing of the past in a way, because now the higher scores, like Cris said, are kind of, you know, like people are getting so many more high scores all the time. And when we submit the wine, we submit it with a price usually. You know, so we don't change it for that vintage because we told the critic and they published what the price was. We can say TBD. Yeah, or the following vintage. I mean, so price, price could be if you made a tiny amount.
This kind of window of or menu of pricing as it is anyway. I mean, it's oftentimes a little bit more established. There's not this rise and fall of pricing typically as it is anyway. So
yeah. Our fluctuations
actually get to wine. Oh, sorry, Don, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was saying our fluctuations on costs are huge, but we can't just change our wine price every year based on our farming costs or our fruit costs, or, you know.
Wouldn't that be
great?
Pretty
stable number.
That would be awesome. Like, oh wow, look at that. Last year it was 4,500 a ton, and this year
2020 would be expensive wine.
We could all be like, in Napa, there's Andy Beckstoffer that, charges his fruit prices based on the bottle prices, but then also like take it to the next level. If you got 100 on this wine, I'm raising your fruit price to X, So, I mean, it definitely should trickle down to the grower as well.
The number of the score times 2.
I think, Manu threw a question out there with regards to some of our criterias, and I'm going to tie it into the 96 through 100. I've tasted more 100-point wines that I thought were kind of gross than I haven't. And, you can taste a wine that is a few years old that has seen a super high score that you know where it was when the reviewer tasted it, depending on the reviewer. Just unbelievably textural, just wow, this is absolutely amazing. This is a candle burning at both ends. So, if you can get it before that wick is gone, great. But after that, who knows? And I think I've actually, I always look at scores, I mean, I think it helps us get an idea of what's kind of trending, if you will. Wow, you're confusing me here, Chris. I've lost my people.
Supposed to be talking about your wife.
Sorry.
You're on some wine.
Transition.
But I think at the end of the day, it's I talk to my peers. I'll go to a wine shop I dig, and there's nothing more fun to me than chatting with a person and say, I'm looking for this. Let's keep it between, I don't know, let's keep it between 50 and 75 bucks. I want to go this, giving them parameters and then letting them run. And then, buying 6 bottles and taking them home and keeping a line of dialogue open with the person that sold the wine. Like, wow, that one's amazing. And that's what's fun. It goes back to, record buying days, once again, dating myself. But, I think if you look at wine like music, it's like no one who listens to a whole album anymore. It's like, no, I'm going to go to Spotify. I'm going to cherry pick, if you will, all these great songs from various albums and put them together. But it's often many times the B-side songs that are like totally resonate. And sometimes it takes a little while to get that. What are these wines?
These are, so we're at that point where we're still talking about the topic, but let's talk about what we're drinking. And so we have 3 wines that our panelists have provided to each other and myself to taste through, and we'll keep talking about this topic. We'll still keep checking on the chat there to see what's happening. But I wanted to make sure that we got to the first wine, which, Cris, you were talking, and it's this MAHA that is 100% claret, I believe.
Yeah, this is a second release of Before Anyone Else off of our estate vineyard, which is MAHA. It is 100% claret. It's fermented in oak. It sees a little bit of lee stirring or batonnage. It's about 35% new French oak. There may be a Hungarian barrel in there as well. From a conceptual point of view, actually along this picture here, if you look at that bottom block, you see the block that is the least green. The one to the left of that is the claret. Yeah. And, it's designed to be a textural, delicious, age-worthy white wine, which the first vintages, which have been 2, I think we've hit what we wanted to do on it. And Jordan, I love Jordan's comment of the wine having a spot of reduction to it. So a little bit of flint and a little bit of matchstick. She's like, I love that reduction. I said, I love it too. I have no idea how I'm going to get that again. I don't even know how it happened the first time. So
Don't be honest.
It's awesome.
Yeah, and this is really kind of a cool site picture, because you can see Adelaida in the background. You can see Luna Mata. You can see portions of Dow. That highest peak on the left back is Adelaida. Yeah. There's some cool sites back there. It's a pretty good shot of the Adelaida district. I would say kind of from that eastern corridor.
Just to comment on your wine real quick, I really enjoy it, and I think one of the challenges for white wines in our region, with the climate being what it is to make a wine with this much richness and ageability, but also keeping it fresh and bright and nice acidity. And I think you did a great job with that.
Well, thank you. I one of the things I think I think our white wines as a region are some of our best wines, and they're super age worthy. They're textural. They're just delicious. And this is not an inexpensive wine by any means. It's $100. And I was tasting through all of the wines initially with a friend of mine, Joel Crosby, and I'm like, yeah, I'm trying. He's like, this claret is banger. I'm like, I know, thank you. I'm trying to figure out how to price it. You know, where do I price it from the reds? He's like, why would you price it any differently? I was like, perfect, sold. Because it
costs us the same to farm it and make it. I totally agree with you.
Same care, same dedication.
Aging it.
Why should white wine cost any less than red wine? And, you know, except for Burgundy and, you know, Alsace and parts of Germany, it just doesn't command the price. I love the comment in Chateauneuf, like, you know, we make white Chateauneuf to drink at home. We don't want to sell it to anybody. It's something for us to drink during the summer.
Yeah.
And this wine, the way it drinks, I mean, there's such great texture and mouthfeel of this wine. It's almost like I'm drinking a red wine in the fact that it has such a full mouth appeal, but yet still some really great firm acidity in there that just is beautiful.
And Cris, thank you for putting up the picture in the background is some of my children that roam the vineyard from time to time.
Yeah, and a bird's nest, I see.
That's where I sleep. This is some of our crew this harvest. So I love this because it's you've got the sorting table and then you've got a fairly steep hill in the background, which is
yeah, that's great.
That's cool.
Awesome. I know we had a few comments come through here, but Cris, how many acres are planted to vines at MAHA?
So MAHA is a 13-acre property. It's all Demeter biodynamic certified and CCOF organic certified.
Great.
It accounts for about 50% of our production this last year.
Excellent. And then really quick, before we move on to the other wine, Via Creek Cellars versus MAHA, what's the distinction there?
So the MAHA is all estate. It's an interpretation of the place in a given vintage. We make 3 wines, 2 reds and a white. MAHA Via Creek is purchased fruit from some great sites on the west side of Paso and one side out of Edna Valley, along with the MAHA fruit. So we have some great fruit sourcing. In years past, we've worked with Vineyards. We still work with James Berry Vineyard, and we've been doing so since 2002, which is Justin and Heather Smith's property. We've worked with Luna Mata. We've worked with Denner. We've worked with Bill Gibbs's G2 Vineyard, and as we have more fruit coming online, we're playing more at home and just cherry picking, if you will, some of the sites that we've always enjoyed all those sites, but from an economics point of view, it makes more sense for us to play at home, and I think it also resonates better as far as the story goes.
Thank you. Next is Veracity. Is that right? Veracity here.
Yes.
Ahead a little bit. But I wanted to make sure, Jordan, I know we're tight on time with you, but let's talk a little bit about Veracity.
Awesome. Yeah. So this is our GSM. It's Mourvèdre base with Grenache heavy and a little bit of Syrah. So it's like sort of the mid palate on the Paso scale. And it's one of my favorite wines. We're 100% estate grown. So all our fruit comes off of one or all three or a combination thereof of our 3 vineyard properties on the west side of Paso. This picture is of our Paderewski vineyard. And the next one is of our York Mountain Vineyard, which is actually outside of the Paso Robles AVA. It's even cooler. It's further west. And the wine that we're making, I'll get to push and pull which varieties and which site I'm using to create the wine that I want to make. Cris is toggling through pictures of our vineyards and then now our winery for all of those who haven't been able to visit us. And having the 100% estate control allows us to, we do biodynamic farming practices. We're not certified though, but we're able to do whatever we want to do on a given vintage. And I've been here now over, I think it's like 10 vintages, 11 harvests and 10 full years. And really learning from the different blocks and what they can all give us to make the wines. So that's really awesome. The Veracity, I chose that one because it was kind of fun. It like spanned in scores from 93 to 98, which I think is really interesting. And like, it's a similar percentages or varieties to what Dawn brought. So you guys will try that one next. It's got a Grenache Mourvèdre, but it's really fun for me to show what Mourvèdre and Grenache blend can achieve on the west side of Paso, because we all think that Syrah is king. I don't know if you guys hear that, but I think there's a frog in here. I don't know if you can hear it croaking. That's really funny right now. But yeah.
I thought Dawn was happy.
Dawn was making noises about the wine. But I'd love to hear what Dawn and Cris think. I've known these guys for a long time. I have one of our wonderful winery workers is now working with Cris. So it's just like this family in Paso, and it feels really great to have the connection to everyone about that. But yeah, when I do jump off, if I jump off really quickly, it's because Epoch we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary for selling wine. And we have 10 years from today is when we opened our tasting room. And so at 4:00, we have a toast for that. So I'm sorry if I have to duck out, but that's why you'll see me escape.
We'll toast you now.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah. But if you have a sec, I'd love to hear what you guys are thinking. This is a 2016 too, where the other two wines are 18s.
Delicious. I think right off the bat, just thinking about 16 as a vintage, I'm really happy with the way the tannins are so resolved and soft and supple in the mouth. And the intensity's there, but without the overblown tannins, and well balanced and dark, luscious. It's beautiful.
And I think I concur with Dawn. I think this wine is probably just starting to hit its stride. I think it's starting to relax a little bit, because the 16 wines have been taught. And, I think as the Western corridor of this region, we're challenged with acid and tannin. And so to mitigate that, to create a wine that is texturally intriguing, it in the long run, it makes for a better wine. And I think this wine is just starting to kind of,
for sure,
to stretch its legs and go, oh, okay, let's party. And
I agree.
Yeah.
I think we all know you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have a wine upon release that's just like, oh my God, this is amazing, and it'll age for 20 years. It ain't gonna happen. We do have a friend who argue that. He's called me out several times. I'm just wrong. But
I don't know what you're talking about.
You be quiet, kid. But I think this wine's great. I think this wine's got a lot of life in it.
Oh, for sure.
Thank you. I know. And I think that we're all three of these wines, that's what they strike me as I would love to lay them all down You know, I think
Absolutely.
even the white is going to age just as well as the reds for the next, who knows, 5 to 10 years. It'll be really fun to see where everything's at, for
Agreed.
sure.
There's a question
Thank you,
about
guys.
decanting philosophy, and I'll take it a step further in that with these wines in particular, are you decanting them? Or what are we doing?
I'm not a big decanter. I'll just say that right away. I like to watch the wine evolve in my glass over hours and then in the bottle over hours and a couple days. So I'm not a big decanter, but I understand if you have like one moment to show the wine in a wine dinner, decanting can be important depending on the tannin structure of the wine and the reduction. But I'll leave it at that.
Kind of a case by case basis.
Yeah.
It really, I think I love to drink a bottle of wine over several days to see how it evolves. But if it's over a night, you know, it really depends on the circumstances in which it's going to be consumed. You know, it's crazy when we sat down to an Australian wine dinner a few years ago, and I was like, wow, these wines are amazing. They're fresh. He's like, 2 of them I opened yesterday and decanted, and the other 2 I opened this morning at 8 and decanted. I was like, wow. So I think it has a lot to do with knowing the wine and being confident
For sure.
where it's going to go.
For me, if I
I'm going to say bye. Sorry. I'm going to say bye to everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Happy
Bye,
New
Jordan.
Year. I miss seeing you guys in person.
Hope I can drink
All
with
of
you in
you.
person one of these days.
I know. Soon, I hope. Happy 2021 to everyone.
I was just going to say that if I know I'm going to have a bottle on a given night and I have the opportunity, I might open the bottle the night before, take a sip of it, check it for any flaws or anything else, and then just put the cork back in, leave it out. And to me, that kind of gives it a good head start. Then it still evolves more. It's not getting overly aerated through decanting the night before, but it just kind of gives it a head start.
Right on. Well, Don, while you're talking, we should probably move on to your wine. Well, I've got you, and I'll put up the slides here in just a second.
Sure. So I brought a 18, so kind of a baby, so to speak. It is a Syrah Grenache Mourvedre, pretty Syrah heavy, over 90% Syrah. Comes from G2 Vineyard, one of the vineyards that Cris was referring to, owned by Bill Gibbs. It's a singular block, about 1.8 acres, up on top of a hill, really thin soil, sees a lot of sun. So this is kind of a powerful Syrah, at least for our lineup. This is on the heavier side of our wines. But I think that it's a pretty good expression of balance with power. We like to try and show the elegant side of it, even though it is pretty extracted and intense. We do try to tame the tannins a little bit to make it, as Cris said, impossible to do both, but we like to kind of at least make it approachable early on and then also ageable. Definitely not going to be as good out of the gate as it will be 5-7 years down the line. But, you know, with it from a marketing and sales standpoint, it's nice to have something that's at least recognizably, people can understand that what it's going to become and enjoy it somewhat sooner than later.
It's super sexy and just delicious right now. I mean,
Thank you.
I mean, it's going to be hard to not just sit here and get drunk.
I wish I could come over.
I wish you could too, Don.
The label is really interesting, Don. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So Bill Gibbs, the owner of the vineyard, is an avid sailor. He has one of the fastest production catamarans in California. He loves to sail. And I, after going to Cal Poly for ag business, decided to get on a boat and travel for a while. So I took a boat from Southern California down through the Panama Canal and back up to Florida in my early 20s. And so I had a little bit of sailing experience myself. So it seemed like a little common thread between the owner of the vineyard and myself. And then we went with kind of a dark, brooding look to the label because I kind of feel like this what this wine presents.
I think texturally it's really spot on. And I think as those tannins soften just a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I mean, don't quote me on that.
I know what you're going to tell me as soon as we're off this call.
That we need to socialize.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Totally.
I like this question, Don, sent to you. It says, Don, not to sound like a job interview, but where do you see Turtle Rock in the next few years? Case production or new varietals or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, we're working with a few new varietals. We definitely are trying to grow. Right now, we're just over 2,000 cases. The current goal the next couple of years would be to get somewhere around 3,000 cases. But it's not as simple as it sounds. You don't just grow a brand, at least the way we're doing it. For me, it's about finding the right fruit, the right vineyard that fits with my vision. So as blocks of fruit that I think are exceptional and interesting come up, we are leasing those as we can. So we're growing slowly but surely. And I don't know, 3,500, 4,000 cases would probably be the max I would ever want to go. I think after that, it's kind of a whole different ballgame. But if all goes well, we'll be there someday.
Right on. And back to topic, have these wines, guys, have they gone to be scored, or they're not ready yet, or what's happening?
Well, I'm just looking at the 2018 Turtle Rock G2 vineyard from Jeb Duddick, and he totally underrated it at 99 points.
One more. God damn it.
Little Vicar. I give this 107 all day long.
Has he rated the white yet for you, the 18?
He didn't see the whites. I was just pulling that up right now because I know Josh saw the wine.
Oh yeah, how did Josh? I don't remember. I know I looked at it, but
Josh gave this wine 93 points. I think
it's better than that, but
I would agree. I concur. It's he's the only reviewer that's currently seen it, but
okay.
We don't make a lot of this wine. We make I think we made 50 cases of this wine, and
so
I think.
Are you sure you even want to waste a bottle to send to the people to score it?
Thank you for sharing one with me. For everybody watching, when
telling you,
that means a publication called Venice, and based out on the East Coast. So
yeah, and it's good, and I think once again, it's $100 bottle of white wine, so we won't have a problem selling 50 cases, which is what this vintage gave us for this particular wine. But I don't think it's something I could build a 200, 400, 500 case program on.
You can put me down for some bottles, though.
Of course, Don, as you wish.
Excellent.
It really, I think when we all sit down and look at the economics and the business of this is, okay, well, this is a great wine and it's got great scores and it's X price. What do you think we can, how far can we push this? Can we make 5,000 cases of it? Well, that's not unheard of. You look at some of the first growth Bordeaux productions and, they're getting $800 to $1,500 a bottle and they're making 20,000 cases of it.
Yeah.
But there's also a tremendous amount of history and track record. And that's something that we have, we've been doing. We're just scratching the surface here. I think I think this is my 20th harvest making wine, and not that I'm the young kid anymore, but I'm definitely not the old guard. And I think it's just time and getting out there and meeting people and having them taste your wine and enjoy your wine and get what you're doing. Because when you're a consumer, whether you're a winemaker or any type of consumer, when the light bulb goes on and goes, I totally get what this person's doing and I dig it, I'm in. That helps build the brand.
I agree. I don't think there's any better ambassador for a brand or a wine than you or myself. Like if you want to understand what we're doing,
And Don works with Justin Smith, and I purchased fruit from him. So we're pretty tight with Justin, and I think it was last year he got a smattering of scores that ranged between like 96 and 99 points, maybe 100. I'm like, how'd you do on that? He's like, I think we put 4 people on our mailing list. I'm like, so when you add people to your mailing list these days, where are they coming from? He's like, they're coming from people that have been enjoying the wines with people that buy our wine.
But not even close. Yeah. The amount of people.
You get saturated in a reviewer's readership. It's like you have to continue to beat that drum. You have to get outside of your comfort zone and outside of your circle. But our consumers, the people that buy our wine, they're our biggest advocates. I mean,
without a doubt.
We've had so many folks that are like, hey, you know what? We were drinking with Steve and Martha Hewitt, and we had one of those MAHA wines, and we're in. We want to play, and that's awesome. That's really what makes it. I mean, the reviewer who has a broader sense of tasting is one thing, and it's always nice to have a bit of a pat on the back. But when someone gets switched on to you from people that have come to your winery and spent time with you and broken bread, that's the real money. From a satisfaction point of view.
To kind of put it in a simple way, that 99 on that G2, it's not 100, but it's up there. We maybe saw a sign up or two for our allocation list and maybe sold a case or two. And then on a random Tuesday afternoon, I had a dozen signups from Austin, Texas, because one of our members had a wine dinner at his house and invited 12 of his friends. And they all said that we love this one. It's just the different, and like Cris said, the environment, the guy's been out, he met me, he understands who we are, what we're doing, what we're about. And when he shares the wine with someone, he's got the passion behind it and the understanding. And I think people in general are looking more for direction from peers than from just a critic.
It's still a discovery process too, and so it makes me, and Cris, you and I talked about this on where do you want to be? Do you want to be consistently, as a consumer, that is, you want to look at somebody that's consistently scoring? And I think we all know the answer to this question, but it spurred some fun conversation with us. Or do you want to find that unicorn? Do you want to find that one that came out of left field that all of a sudden they got a 98? What's that all about? And how much trust do you put then into that?
The unicorn is usually a wine that gets opened at a party or at dinner that, it may or may not have been scored. And you're like, wow, that's amazing. We had dinner with a small group of folks the other night, and the host was like, here, check this out. And he pulls out this 90 Hermitage, which is all Syrah from the Northern Rhone. And he pulls the cork. I'm like, holy shit, that wine is so fresh, so delicious. I would have never guessed that. Right. So I think those unicorn wines are best when you can get the bridle on their neck and enjoy it, as opposed to going out and trying to find a unicorn.
Chase them.
Yeah, it's hard to lasso a unicorn. They've got that thing coming out of their head. they're elusive.
Tough shot.
It's a tough shot. You gotta be a hell of a cowboy.
Yeah, and I think it might be fun for our consumers, our wine family, when they've been enjoying our wines for a while, and then along comes a nice score, for them to say, oh, maybe pat themselves on the back, or I knew this wine was great, or something like that. But I think it's more. I think ultimately it should be about the consumer, and I don't know that scores by critics are really the best way to get the consumer what they're looking for anyway, if that makes sense.
I think we've got a nice, good potentially last question, because we are running a little over time already, believe it or not. But Manu, who's still on with us, do you wish the scoring system was different? And if so, how?
Yeah, I mean,
Think
I
about
don't
it
know if
though.
you make
It's
a difference.
1 to 100. Nobody ever gets
Right.
60,
It should be 85 to 100, really.
right?
Seems.
So then should it be 1 to 5 or should it be 1 to 3? Do we go like Michelin star?
Yeah. I don't know.
I
That's
mean,
a
there's
hard-
publications
that's
out there that give it kisses, right? Or lips. And then there's others that give them thumbs and others that get, stars. So
I think going back to what Cris was saying earlier too, that maybe not so much the scoring system, but I really do, and I know it's not possible, but I really do wish that it was done more on a personal basis of understanding the winemaker, the site, what they're trying to accomplish. You know, it's not really a feasible answer, but I do believe that it's not so much the numbers as it is the telling of the story and the understanding the direction that the winemaker is trying to take and the way that he is or she is able to bring that fruit from that site to life. I think would be a better use of trying to get people, you know, to understand what we're doing.
Well, I agree with Don, and Don and I both come out of the hospitality world. We both were in the restaurant, working the floor, and much like we had a French intern that worked at a Via Creek restaurant a few years ago before we started Harvest. It really comes down to telling the story, you know, and if you can in a wine shop or at a table or over a Zoom call or any whatever the vehicle is to convey the message, tell the story, and whoever's listening goes, oh, I get it, I'm in. That's awesome. And I think the score is such a, like, you know, we have a term, the score whore. You know, the score whore is kind of like a coupon clipper. You know, oh, I bought Don Burns's wines when he was getting 99 points. Now he's only getting 94, 97 points, and I don't buy the wines anymore. You know, those people come and go. It's like, hey, Don, you just got 99 points. I want 10 cases of that wine.
Yeah.
And you won't see me until you score 99 points again. You know,
Right.
That's not the relationship we're looking to establish with our client base. We want folks in for the long haul. We want folks to go, you know, Cris and Don and Jordan, they're hardworking and they make great wines. And, you know, maybe this was an off vintage for the region, but they still have our best interest in mind. They're making the best wine possible for the given vintage. And when you can capture those folks, get them into the boat, bound their faces with duct tape and tie them up and keep them for as long as you can, that's fantastic. Yeah. And I think the region is very fortunate to have a lot of great folks that are on board. You know, it's like, I mean, how many folks say, dude, I've been switched on to Paso for like 15 years and now the world's starting to find out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's well put. You guys, we've been on for a little while. We're gonna call it a day. Thank you so much, Don, Cris, Jordan, who is off now.
Yes.
Guys, appreciate your time spent on this on this subject. I hope everybody watching, hang on, you can't cheers and not drink.
Sorry.
Everybody,
Cris,
little something out of it. I didn't get to all the questions. There was a lot of questions. I invite you though, that if you do want to get a hold of us and want to ask some other different questions, like things, I think there was a thing about how many or white wines or white grapes are grown in the region, please email me. There's also, you can get a hold of these guys very easily. Just go to their websites. I know you're going to find their email addresses there, and so they'll get back to you. Thank you again, guys. Our next show next week will be on Thursday again. So the Paso Wine Hour will return on Thursday, 3 p.m. We will be unveiling, well, actually, we kind of announced it on Tuesday, but I can't tell you who yet, but the Paso Robles wine industry's persons of the year. Let's just use that as a little hint. is coming out that day. So that's going to be our guests, if you will, on next Thursday. An icon in the region, I will tell you, it will be a really fun show. I can guarantee you that. And it'll be a good time, and you'll get to meet somebody who's also not only iconic, but has a lot of history, very much a lot of history in our region. So it's amazing that they haven't actually been awarded this award yet. It's quite surprising. So little bits of hints for you. Come back again, visit us on pasowine.com. We're also on Facebook, on Instagram. Thank you everybody for joining us. Really appreciate you being here. Happy New Year. And we're gonna keep this going every Thursday, 3 p.m. Yep.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks,
Thank you,
Chris.
Chris.
See you.
Good to see you guys.
See you guys.
Be well, everybody.